The Sri Lankan government today declared a state of emergency for 10 days in the country. This comes after violent clashes broke out between Buddhists and minority Muslims in the central district of Kandy. A fresh curfew was imposed today and heavily armed special task force units were deployed in the Teldania and Palakel areas of the Kandy district. Now, just to understand what this is all about and what the genesis of the whole problem is, we're joined by Paikiasothy Saravanamuttu, Executive Director at the Centre for Policy Alternatives. He's joining us live from Sri Lanka. Dr. Sara, thanks so much for joining us on Bloomberg Quint. I just wanted to understand from you if you could tell us what the current state of affairs is and what the genesis of the problem is.
Well, I think the genesis of the problem is after the war ended between the government of Sri Lanka and the Tamil Tigers in 2009, there has been a lot of tension that has come out into the open between the majority Sinhala Buddhist community in particular and the Muslim community. It feels that the minorities are a threat and that they have more financial and economic power, and also the argument that the population statistics suggest to them, quite erroneously, that they will be swamped by people of a different ethnicity and a different race, and a different religion, And so I think these kinds of fears, which are being stoked by extremist groups, people purporting to be Buddhist monks, who are seen as the champions of the land, the race, and the faith, who are stoking up these violent emotions, resulting in disruption.
Right. But also, Dr. Sara, you know, when it comes to Sri Lanka and the 3-decade civil war that took place, this seemed to be a community which was completely out and completely, sort of isolated from this particular sort of violence. Is it politically motivated? Is that what the word on the street is? Is this perhaps politically motivated?
Well, during the previous regime of President Mahinda Rajapaksa, there was widespread belief that some of the extremist Buddhist elements were being given protection and sponsorship from within the regime to stoke up these ethnic conflicts and religious conflicts. And the argument was that the regime wanted to retain major control of the majority Sinhala Buddhist community and saw these divisive tactics as being a means of doing so. So yes, I think there is an element of political instigation, control, manipulation with regard to these events. And it's important that the government elected in 2015 on a platform of reconciliation, on a platform that said that they would not give any credence to the culture of impunity that had prevailed before, that they come out very strongly and show that this will not be allowed and that the multi-religious, multi-ethnic character of the country will be upheld and protected and indeed defended against elements of this kind.
Right, Dr. Sara, and also, the last time this happened was, I think, 7 or 8 years ago in Sri Lanka. But considering how technology has advanced over the years, there seems to be, well, also talk of clamping down on social media in this time as well, especially Facebook, to sort of prevent any sort of hate speech.
I think this begs the question of as to how feasible that kind of control and regulation can be. And also, importantly, the extent to which it would be an act of repression with regard to the fundamental rights of people's freedom of expression and speech, etc. So one has to think about this very seriously in terms of how one tries to control a technology. I mean, there is no denying that there has been a lot of hate speech that has gone viral on social media in the last couple of weeks. People purporting to be Buddhist monks, preaching the politics of hate and hurt and harm. But the government has to be very careful in terms of how it deals with this and that it does not encroach upon fundamental rights. I think what is required here is clear, cogent, unequivocal communication of the government's deep commitment to ensuring that this thing stops, and leadership from both the President and the Prime Minister to the community, to the country at large, that they will not brook any kind of infringement of people's rights and any kind of discriminatory activity and violence on the grounds of religion and ethnicity. That clear leadership, I think, is important, and civil society has to ensure that it persuades, if nothing else, people to stop transmitting and purveying this hate speech that has come on social media, that they don't distribute it, that they don't spread it around.
Considering that this is the declaration of emergency in Sri Lanka, it does obviously entail troop deployments on the streets of Sri Lanka's big cities, and of course also search and arrests, perhaps without a warrant in such an extraordinary state of affairs. Are we seeing, well, essentially any sort of suspension of activity in the capital city, Colombo, or even, of course, within Kandy itself?
No, the reports are that the situation is relatively calm in the areas that were the trouble spots. And no, I wouldn't say that is the case in Colombo either. I think the emergency powers have been invoked in anticipation of a worst possible case scenario, and hopefully that will not be realized. So I think at the present moment it's much more calm. It's very important, though, that, we don't send out the wrong message, and that the emergency powers, if they are to be used in a way that tramples on people's basic rights. And I have confidence that this government, given the platform on which it was elected and the constituency that brought it to power, will make sure that that is not the case. I think the declaration of emergency in that respect was to send out a strong, clear message that the government fully intends to take control of affairs and ensure that peace, stability, and hopefully ethnic and religious harmony prevails.
Absolutely, Dr. Sara. On that note, thank you so much for joining us on Bloomberg. We really appreciate you taking out the time. And for all of you watching, thanks so much for tuning in.